Alrighty friends, today I want to talk to you about bacteria in wells. So I've been getting this question quite a bit. Does a loose well cap cause bacteria? Let's get into it. So you have a well, right? The EPA recommends to test your water once a year, right? And at least what they're trying to get you to test for is going to be for your bacteria and for nitrates. The reason you want to test for nitrates, we have a field, right? If you're near farms, even like way over there, if you're next to farms, the likelihood of you having nitrates is pretty high because it's going to come from fertilizers, right? Nitrogen's in all sorts of poo. Fertilizer's poo, right? So you're going to end up with nitrates in the water. The next thing you want to test for is bacteria, whether it be E. coli or total coliform. E. coli is the nasty one that we always see in our on the news when there's some kind of outbreak in like Chipotle or whoever else. E. coli is not so great, pretty rare. I don't usually see it happen too often on a well system. The most common intrusion point for E. coli in a well, I usually see to be farm animals, right? If you have a whole bunch of cows, horses, chickens hanging out next to your well, of course you're gonna end up with E. coli. The most common issue though is gonna be total coliform. Total coliform is just a blanket term for, hey, something's there that shouldn't be there. It's almost as if like you were to lick your shirt, right? Lick the wall, lick a tree, do something like that. There's bacteria everywhere, but doesn't mean you should be drinking water with bacteria in it. The most common issue that you'll see with total coliform is nausea, right? But how you treat it is you fix whatever might be broken on the well and you chlorinate. If chlorinating the well does not work, the next step is go to an ultraviolet light. But you're here today to listen and learn about the well cap. So there's a lot of research that's been done on how bacteria gets into a well. You could have a whole pocket of bacteria somewhere underground in the aquifer that might be moving very slowly. It could take 3 years for it to move its way over to you and cause problems in your well, but one day it could get there. That's kind of out of your hands as a homeowner. There's not much you can really do about that besides just test your water regularly. When it pops up, chlorinate, right? Now, you generally over here, we're on the eastern portion of Maryland today. They don't necessarily have to worry about that as much, but if you were to go to the middle western portion near like Hagerstown, Cumberland, that area, they tend to have a lot more issues with E. coli and bacteria. So a lot of the homes over there will have UV lights installed preemptively prior to doing anything else because usually chlorinations don't work too well over there, right? But over here today, what we're looking at is going to be this well. So when you take a look at the well, the first thing you want to do is you want to give it a shake, make sure that everything's where it belongs, right? You should be able to pull on that well cap and it shouldn't move anywhere. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to pull on the conduit, and then you're going to look all around the base. So the purpose of looking at the casing is to make sure there's no holes, right? A PVC well casing, as long as you don't hit it with a mower, usually you're fine. A steel well casing, on the other hand, that's where you run into a little bit more of a concern that it could start pitting and rotting, and you're usually going to get a hole somewhere about that much off the bottom of the ground, right? PVC, as long as you don't hit it, usually you're fine. But you want to take a look at it, right? Make sure your mower didn't smack it. This time of year, it's early spring. Everybody's starting to get the first mows of the season in. That's usually where we see most of our accidental oopsie-doopsies when people hit them. The conduit, that's just going to house the electrical line. That's the cheap, easy one to fix. So if you're going to hit up one of those two pipes, hit that, not the casing. Casing's a little bit more expensive to fix. The cap, its sole purpose is basically to keep debris out of the well, right? You could have grass clippings, ants, spiders, all sorts of other things floating around going into your well. That's why we no longer use one-piece well caps, right? I keep getting a lot of people that tell me, oh no, the bacteria comes in from the groundwater. Kind of, yeah, sometimes it does. The majority of the bacteria that I see getting into wells is because the lid's not attached all the way, they have an old school one-piece well cap, or they don't have a lid at all, right? I did one the other day where we tested for bacteria. Obviously it failed. The lid was missing and the well was just sitting in the middle of a giant bush. There was no protection. It was covered in ants. Ants were swarming everywhere. They're basically drinking ant water. As yummy as that is, maybe it's extra protein. Some people might like it, but I certainly wouldn't want to drink water with a bunch of ants in it. So if you have a loose well, you run the risk of more bacteria getting into it just in pure chance, right? By having that higher risk, you run the likelihood of needing to chlorinate your well or fixing it. So if somebody says, hey, your cap's not attached, that could potentially produce bacteria, the answer is not, oh no, it's not gonna do nothing. It's, okay, let's get that cap fixed. Even if you do it yourself, it's not that big of a deal, but you wanna have a secureable cap. The other thing is you want to make sure you put the right type of cap on the right type of casing, right? If you have a steel casing, that kind of lid is not going to work, right? You want to use the proper fitting casing or proper fitting lid for that type of casing. All the manufacturers, like this one, will tell us, what does that well cap fit on? Does it fit on PVC? Does it fit on steel? What else can we put it in there, right? If you're not taking a look at your well every year, maybe every 6 months, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. You want to make sure that all your drinking water is in pretty good shape and that everything's doing what it's supposed to do. Fixing a cap's not super expensive. Chlorinating wells not super expensive. Most homeowners can do it themselves. It's really not that complicated or that difficult. But it is intimidating, right? If you've never done it before, it's scary, just like doing anything else in your home that's plumbing. But again, there's been far more research done through the University of Maryland, Virginia Tech, Ohio, Indiana. A ton of universities have done research on the condition of a well cap versus how much bacteria gets into it. Maryland State requires wells to be a certain height and have certain specific types of lids depending on where you're at. Are you in a floodplain, you get a different type of lid, not in a floodplain, etc. That code exists for a reason, right? They wouldn't just arbitrarily say, oh, you need to have a 2-piece well cap. Back in the day, yes, a 1-piece well cap, perfectly fine. But we've learned after having hundreds of wells, thousands of wells, come back with problems, we've learned that those 1-piece caps are not as good as we used to think they were, right? Believe it or not, in the 1940s and 50s, they would bury the stupid things. One, finding them and fixing them is really tedious if you have a house that's been there forever and it's changed hands 3 or 4 times. Nobody remembers where the stupid well's at. Finding it kind of sucks. But if you have a well sticking up like that, you're less likely to get groundwater and other kind of contaminants flowing into your well. Whereas if you have it buried, and let's just say that the seal on the well cap goes bad, guess what you're getting, right? Now, this style of lid is going to be a watertight one, not a waterproof lid. And the reason why, if we look underneath, you'll see these vent holes, right? Those vent holes are meant for the well. They do sell floodproof caps that'll actually seal that off if the water level rises up. It's just in this particular area, you're very unlikely to find that kind of lid. I usually only see that on the Eastern Shore and in parts of Anne Arundel County, Calvert County, Charles County, St. Mary's County. Up in Harford County and Cecil County, not as common, right? That style, super common to see. So I hope that this brought a little bit more, clarity to this conversation. I'm not saying that there is no chance that bacteria comes in naturally through the groundwater, but it's also far more likely that you're going to have bacteria issues if you don't have your well looking the way it's supposed to look, right? This is how a well should look, even though it's got a little bit of mildew on it. It's a little cockeyed, but not that bad. That's how you should have it. It should all be secure, tight, nothing's broken. There's no giant gaping holes in it. You don't see wires, you don't see a bee's nest or anthill living inside of there. Your water is very important to make sure it's looking good. You're drinking it, right? If you wouldn't lick the floor, probably should take care of your drinking source. But if you enjoy this, please hit that like button, subscribe. I have more information posted every day. Let's grow together, let's learn, let's have the conversation. If there's an area you want me to discuss, leave a comment below. I try to get to all the comments. I try to cover any topics that anybody's interested in learning about. Till next time, guys.